it's going to require protective face coverings across the board in our courthouses with very, very few exceptions. I'm oversimplifying, but the only exceptions will really be for jurors when answering questions in voir dire and for witnesses when testifying. And even then, we're going to require other protective means even during those exceptional times. We'll be working to have a system in place to process FED cases when the moratorium ends. And like I said, we're going to keep working towards consistency in best practices across the state. We also have to move forward on our backlog of pending cases. And this chart shows the number of pending cases statewide in 2019 and 2020. If you follow the top of the chart from left to right, you can see that the number of pending cases was declining until about May of 2020, when it started to inch up again. On the right side, you can see the growing backlog in cases 6 to 12 months old. That's showing in the green on the chart. See how that green is getting bigger? We are having a growing backlog. Pending cases are increasing in about half of our courts, and in many of our case types, the time to disposition is too long. Some of our courthouses do not have the space necessary to conduct jury trials safely. We have to keep jurors and witnesses and litigants 6 feet or more apart, and sometimes we just don't, excuse me, have the space for that. As you know, we're dependent on our counties to provide our court facilities. But still, amazingly, and I think Oregon is a leader in this, in 2020, we were able to have 162 jury trials, 99 for felony and 61 in misdemeanor cases. But there are challenges that we face. We face challenges in the effective use of remote technology. We're improving our use of WebEx for video proceedings. You can see how much more we're doing in that area, but in the recommendations we received from our work groups, almost every one of those work groups said we need more training in how to use the technology that the courts are using to conduct their remote proceedings. Not just courts need to be trained and staff, but also lawyers and litigants. So we will be working on that additional training. And of course, everything that we do, just like everything for the bar, requires resources. I don't know if you are aware that OJD, anticipating budget shortfalls at the state level, took cuts of $19.2 million in this second year of the 21-23 budget. We furloughed employees, they took pay cuts, we didn't fill positions, and we tried to do our part for the state. The budget projection is showing improvement, but we're still very worried that we would be required to take additional cuts at the very time we need to be ramping up and providing more services and attacking our backlogs. So we must and will press for full funding in 21-23. We will absolutely need that funding, and we will be calling on you for your help. As we have in the past, you know the need and you know how to express it, and together we're very hopeful that we can present our case to the legislature. Here is what you can do. I know I'm always asking you, and I just so appreciate you being responsive. Go remote. I know you are, and just do that as much as you can. We know that we need to be holding more trials, and we will figure out how to do that. But we're also going to be using case management tools to ensure that cases move forward. Settlement conferences, discovery conferences, justice delayed is justice denied, and we need to work together to move our cases forward. Keep in touch as you have. Use OJD CJO feedback, and then as you have throughout this, give us grace. We're trying to do that for you as well. what I've asked of our judges and our staff over these last 8 months really has been extraordinary. And what they have given, the dedication they have shown, is really even more astounding. They have kids at home learning their middle school math. They've got elderly parents just like you do. We're all experiencing these difficulties together. So thank them as I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I don't know, Liani, if you have time for questions, maybe not, but I am here, or if not time today, be sure to address those to me at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice Walters, for taking the time to address us at the House of Delegates and for all of your leadership in these challenging times. We won't have time to take questions, but I would encourage people to use that feedback feedback OJD email to provide feedback and ask questions to the Chief Justice. So thank you. Our next agenda item is the report of the Board of Governors Budget and Finance Committee and notice of the 2021 annual fees. You will see that John Brandt, Committee Chair and Board Member from Region 5, has just joined us. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Liani. Thank you. And welcome everyone. I wish I could see everyone's faces, but such is the nature of this new normal. As Liani and Chief Justice Walters have already said, 2020 has been pretty extraordinary for our profession and for our state and for our country. When we began the year as a bar, as a Board of Governors, obviously no one could have predicted all of the impacts that the coronavirus would have on businesses and the legal profession and really the operations of the Oregon State Bar. So I'm going to try to summarize our financial results through September 30th, 2020. And as Liani mentioned, this will also serve as notice of a proposed fee increase, which you'll be asked to vote on a little bit later today. So revenue from general membership fees in 2020 is slightly behind budget as of September 30th. We have a shortfall of right around $44,000. We expect at the end of the year to be about $50,000 below plan. Membership fees make up 2/3 of the bar's total revenue. And unfortunately, the remaining third of the bar's revenue has not been as strong as membership fees. Programs like CLE seminars, legal publications, and the Bar Bulletin are all running below plan. And then while admissions revenue is slightly ahead of our plan for year-end projections, we're still showing a slight gap in revenue. So overall, our year-to-date shortfall is about $150,000, but we're tracking about $550,000 below plan. So we've done a lot of work to make up for the shortfall. So to close the gap, bar management implemented several cost reduction strategies, included eliminating 2 positions via a layoff, and then staff furloughs for every bar employee. We basically eliminated travel and entertainment expenses, and we paused hiring for several open positions. And through all of these actions, the bar has managed to close what was a $550,000 gap to just this $44,000, made it way too big, $44,000 loss on the year. And that's assuming that our investments, which, the stock market has kind of been a bit of a roller coaster, as you probably know. So our investments are currently showing about a $328,000 loss. But the market has been recovering. And so we're hoping that by the end of 2020, we'll be back to sort of a net neutral position with our investments. So as we began work developing the budget for 2021, we got a couple of additional concerns that came to light. One of them, and probably one of the bigger chunks, as you may know, for the last several years, the PLF has contributed $200,000 a year to support the Bar Books program to make sure that Bar Books can be a free member benefit available to all Oregon lawyers. And as you probably know, the PLF has a new CEO this year. And as part of her leadership and program review, the PLF decided to discontinue their contribution to Bar Books starting in 2021. So the bar is not making any changes to the free nature of the Bar Books benefit. But we have already made some personnel changes in that area, and we will likely have to take some additional steps to cover this gap. We've also had to deal with a large loss of projected revenue from CLE seminars that will probably extend well into 2021. The lion's share of CLE program revenue historically comes from in-person seminars, And we really don't anticipate being able to have in-person programming until next summer at the earliest, and possibly not at all in 2021. As we look forward to 2022 and beyond, enrollment in the 3 law schools in Oregon has remained pretty flat. And as of right now, we anticipate that it will remain flat in conjunction just with with the demographic realities of an aging population and an aging lawyer population. That's going to put downward pressure on our overall membership numbers, which membership being 2/3 of our revenue is going to impact our total revenues as well. So as you may know, the number of licensed lawyers in Oregon as a function of the population has been declining for years. But with sort of an increasing wave of retirements from older lawyers and these relatively flat admissions of new ones, the number of bar members has been declining on an absolute basis, not so much, but slightly for the last 2 years. We may see some improvement this year because of the Supreme Court's decision on diploma privilege, but it's not yet clear from the data that we're going to see a bump. And regardless of what happens this year, we are still projecting flat to probably slightly declining membership over the next several years. So that will have an impact on our total revenues. And I'll note here that in addition to the financial realities for the bar, a shrinking lawyer population, coupled with the fact that a higher percentage of lawyers just sort of nationwide tends to be gravitating towards the business law sector as opposed to the people law sector, will definitely have negative implications on the access to justice gap in Oregon. So that's going to continue to require our close attention over the next few years. Back to finances, one of the ways that we were able to cover our revenue shortfall in 2020 was to delay some annual maintenance work on the bar building. And there are several things that we just won't be able to delay past 2021 without really incurring substantial costs, follow-on costs in subsequent years. So I'll note that the bar building is both a fiscal asset and a source of revenue for the bar. So it's important that we keep it in good shape. So based on all of these pressures and the fact that we absolutely do not want to have to resort to another round of furloughs in 2021, the Budget and Finance Committee has concluded that a membership fee increase is needed in 2021 to balance the bar's budget. We are very sensitive, and the entire BOG, we talked about this a lot, is sensitive to raising fees during the pandemic and the economic difficulties that it has wrought for a lot of our members. But it has been 5 years since our last last fee increase. And the economic reality is that costs have gone up over those 5 years. So, where other programs have contributed revenue in the past, as I said, a lot of those programs will almost certainly underperform in 2021. And we're taking steps, but we need some more revenue in order to continue our programming. You should know that the BOG and the bar have recently implemented a program review policy and process where we take a close look at bar programs to make sure that they are serving the mission and functions of the Oregon State Bar. And we will continue to review our programs to ensure that your member fees are serving their intended purpose. Those of you who are section chairs are currently in the early stages of that process, so you know what I'm talking about. But the bottom line is that we need to have a small member fee increase in order to continue to provide the excellent service to the membership and the general public that you all have come to expect from the Oregon State Bar. The good news is that part of this increase will be offset by a reduction that the BOG is proposing for the Client Security Fund assessment for 2021. And that's a reduction that is going to take place even though we will be doubling the payment cap that clients can seek if they've been financially harmed by a lawyer from $50,000 to $100,000 starting in 2022. So that's really good news for the public, but it also means that overall the net increase, because of the financial offset, the net increase that our lawyer members will see is just $25. So that's pretty much it for the financial report. I do want to express a few thank yous, especially in these, as I said before, unprecedented times. So starting with my gratitude to my BOG colleagues for their wisdom and engagement during all of this. And especially to President Leonie Reeves. And as the only other member of the BOG to get a microphone for this meeting without a time limit, I just want to share how much all of us value her leadership and engagement. And I want to express our condolences to Leonie and her family for the loss of her mom. Despite all that Leonie has had to deal with over the past years, she has been a leader and a friend and such a strong advocate for access to justice and for equity inclusion in the bar and for the people of Oregon. I also want to thank President-elect and former Budget and Finance Chair David Wade, who has helped me a lot as I've taken the reins in this committee this year. But really, again, every single member of the BOG has shown up and done their best and put in the work to help guide this organization. So thank you to all of my colleagues. Thank you to Chief Justice Walters and the entire OJD for their leadership and outreach in keeping the wheels of justice turning as much as possible during the early phases of the pandemic, and for your work continuing to make adjustments to keep people safe while the courts do the important work they serve in our society. I really want to thank the Oregon State Bar staff who have engaged in sometimes Herculean efforts to adapt to this strange new normal, making on-the-fly adjustments, and as you're experiencing right now, bringing entirely new technology systems online to support remote participation and engagement. And I'm going to name a few, I'm going to miss people too, but Technology Director Gonzalo Gonzalez for enabling all of these remote capabilities, Karen Lee and her team at CLE Seminars for adjusting to remote learning, Danny Edwards and the member services team supporting our members and sections, Kay Pulu and her teams, and Kateri Walsh and Susan Graby and her team for making sure that the people of Oregon have current and accurate information about how to access legal services during the pandemic. Troy Wood and his team with admissions in organizing our bar exams and handling diploma privilege amid seemingly constantly changing circumstances. And really, if I've missed you, everyone at the bar has just gone above and beyond this year. I want to thank our new Chief Financial Officer, Mike Williams, who started in April, if you can believe it, and has done a tremendous job taking the financial helm of a ship that he didn't really even know the shape of when we handed him the tiller. And part of his success is attributable to our past CFO, Keith Pilevsky, who kept things pretty shipshape for Mike to step into. I can't say enough about the leadership of our CEO, Helen Hirschbiel, who has been able to tap her deep wells of wisdom and empathy and passion for the mission of the Oregon State Bar to lead us during this storm. We are all very fortunate to have her in charge of this organization. And most importantly, I hope that the entire House of Delegates will join me in acknowledging and expressing our appreciation for every single member of the staff of the Oregon State Bar. You know, as I mentioned, there were furloughs that were bar-wide, and everyone who works for this organization has made personal sacrifices, financial and otherwise, that impact their livelihoods and their families so that our bar could survive this upheaval with minimal disruption. A lot of bar staff are on this call, and many others are in their homes doing the hard work of the organization to serve justice and the public interest for the people of Oregon. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all that you do. And that's my report. I'll be back to present a motion in a little while.
Thank you, John. And thank you for all your service to the Oregon State Bar and to the legal community and to the public. So that concludes our reports for the day. Now I will explain how our discussions and voting will proceed here in the Zoom webinar and our voting platform. So please bear with me. I'm just going to go through a number of instructions. So staff is going to start sharing what the voting platform looks like. Hopefully you're all on it already, but we'll screen share it just so that you can follow along. So we will make the sponsor of each resolution a panelist so you can see and hear them. At the same time, we will also bring on screen our green light, yellow light, red light timer, who is named high-tech timer. You will see the green, yellow, and red lights. Sponsors of each resolution will have 5 minutes to present each resolution. We'll count down like we always have. The timer will be green, you're good to go. Yellow, you need to start wrapping it up. And red, you're out of time. We'll be reasonable if you need to finish a sentence, but please be respectful of the time limits. If you continue to go over your time, we will be muting your mic and your video, or at least your mic. At the conclusion of each presentation, the sponsor or one of the sponsors, if there are more than one, will move adoption of the resolution. I will then turn to the House of Delegates members to ask for a second to the motion. Any delegate wishing to second the motion should raise their electronic hand as we practiced at the beginning of the meeting. I will choose one delegate, if any, by name and announce that we have seconded the motion, that delegate has seconded the motion. Once a resolution has been moved and seconded, we will begin debate. All remarks should be directed to the chair. First, I will ask anyone who would like to speak in support of the motion to raise their electronic hand. This will essentially serve as our pro microphone. I will select and announce a name to recognize. If I call your name, you will need to unmute your microphone, and if you have the bandwidth, enable your video camera. You might see your Zoom client momentarily disconnect and reconnect when staff enable your participation. Once your microphone has been enabled, please state for the record your name and the HOD region you represent or the basis of your ex officio status. This is important anytime you speak today. Our proceedings are being stenographically recorded as well as audio and video recorded. Our reporter today is Holly Goodwin, courtesy of the Oregon Court Reporters Association. We can't offer a round of applause, but please accept my thanks on behalf of the House of Delegates and the entire bar membership. So thank you, Holly. Speakers from the floor will have 3 minutes each. Again, keep an eye on the timer. Green, it means you're good to go. Yellow, start wrapping it up. And red, you are out of time. Again, please be respectful of the time limits. If you go over your time, your mic will be muted. You'll be returned to the audience at the end of your time, and all of the hands raised will be lowered. This means there will be no microphone queue like there is when we meet in person. If I don't call your name, you will have another chance when we cycle back, and I will do my best to keep track and call on people who have not already spoken. If you have already spoken, you will not be able to speak until all those who wish to speak have had the opportunity to do so. Next, I'll solicit discussion from those opposed to the motion. One speaker will be given the same opportunity. I'll recognize you, unmute your microphone, start your video, state your name and voting status. Stop speaking when your 3 minutes expires. Finally, I will ask for comments that qualify as other. This is time to ask clarifying questions or make a different motion, such as a motion to call the question, a motion to amend, or some other motion permitted by Robert's Rules of Order. Please do not make motions at the pro or con microphones, and don't forget to state your name before anything else. We will proceed in the same order until all speakers have been recognized or there has been a successful motion to end debate. To tell you more about that, please welcome our parliamentarian for today, Lori Brocker, who will share some tips and is also here to help with any procedural rulings today. Please also turn now to your HOD 2020 voting platform. So I'll now recognize Lori. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning, Leonie. Thank you very much. I'm going to keep my mask on because I'm in a room with other staff in the bar building. Our proceedings today will follow the HOD rules and parliamentary procedure according to Robert's Rules of Order. On the voting site, under the Resources tab, if you select Overview of Procedure for House of Delegates meeting, you will see written information on the voting procedures. Scroll down that page and you will find a chart showing the respective priority of common motions. If you want to make a motion, be aware of where that motion is on the chart. The chart, however, is not an exhaustive list, so don't worry if you want to make a motion that's not on it. If it is in accordance with Robert's rules, it will be allowed. There are two common situations I'd like to highlight. First, when a main motion is under consideration, a secondary motion may arise. When a secondary motion is placed before the House of Delegates, it becomes the immediately pending question. The main motion remains pending while you deal with the secondary motion. Secondly, anyone wanting to close debate or call the question must be at that other category, and you need to be recognized by the president and then present the motion. If the motion is seconded and there appears to be no objection, you'll proceed to vote on the main motion. If there appears to be an objection, we will vote on the motion to close debate. And it takes at least 2/3 to pass that motion to close debate. Thank you, Leonie, and I look forward to helping with any questions that may arise.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you for your pro bono service to the House of Delegates. Along with resources for the delegates, this platform, which we can go back to the screen share now, is also where you can view the resolutions and where we will post any amendments and where you will vote. I will review those procedures now. If you're not already on the resolutions page, please click the word resolutions on the banner at the top of your screen. Now, on the left side of your screen, you will see tabs for all of the resolutions on our agenda. You can see the text of any resolution by clicking on it. If there is a motion to amend, the text of the amendment will be displayed on this page as well. We may need to pause debate briefly so staff can transcribe the text. You will then need to hit the refresh button to see the new text, but don't worry, I will remind you. When I call for a vote, refresh the page to see your voting options. Choose yes, no, or abstain, and click the button to submit your vote. Please note that once you submit your vote, it is final. You can't go back and change it. Once you have voted, you will be redirected to a results page, which you can refresh to update the results. The names of the delegates will be displayed in separate columns indicating how each delegate voted, and a pie chart will show you the percentages of yes and no votes. Because our rules call for a decision by a majority of those casting votes, abstentions will not show on the chart. When voting is complete, I will announce the results and move on to the next resolution. You should also keep in mind that this is a public meeting and the results can be viewed by the public at hod.osbar.org. For each resolution, amendment, or other motion, we will vote in the same manner, review the results, and return to the resolutions page for the next step. I will guide you through the process each time we have a vote. For now and for practice, we're going to use the voting system to establish our quorum. If you could please click on the Quorum Call tab, please select the option that indicates you are present and ready to vote. So can we show the screen of the quorum vote, or are we having technical difficulties? Thank you. We have a quorum. Returning to the resolutions page, our first action item is the adoption of the meeting agenda that was approved by the Board of Governors. I would ask if there is a delegate who would like to make a motion to approve the meeting agenda. Please raise your hand now. Vanessa Nordyke, I recognize you. Please enable your microphone and video, Vanessa, and once you are connected, please state your name and voting capacity.
Good morning, and I move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Nordyke. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I now need a second. So if you second the motion, can you please raise your hand? I see that Michael Rondeau has seconded the motion. I will now move on to discussion. So if we can please unraise all the hands, please. If there's anybody who would like to discuss, speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. If there's anyone who would like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand. If there are any comments from the other microphone, please raise your hand. Okay, with no discussion, we will proceed to the vote. On the motion to adopt the meeting agenda, please turn to the resolutions page of your HOD voting dashboard. If you do not see your voting options, refresh the page. Remember that your vote is final once you submit it, and the results can be viewed by the public at hod.osbar.org. If you like, you can hit the refresh button repeatedly to see the vote tabulating. And can we go ahead and share the results of the vote tabulating? And can I also have Helen perhaps just get on audio and read the helpline number? I'm getting some messages from HOD members that are having trouble getting to the voting platform. So Helen or David Johnson, can you provide the number for the helpline, please?
That would be the main number for the bar, 503-620-0222 or 800-452-8260. And please choose option 5. As soon as you hear my name, you'll have reached the greeting, and there's a group of staff waiting for you to help out.
Thank you, David Johnson. And can we go ahead and see the results for the voting on the motion to adopt the agenda? I'm getting a number of messages from people that say that they can't view the results. All right, thank you. The motion passes. So we will now go back to the resolutions page, and our next item of business is BOG resolution number 1. For those of you who are having trouble viewing the results, they're available on the voting platform. If you're having trouble finding where that is or the refresh button isn't working, please call the bar number and ask for assistance. So BOG resolution number 1 will be presented by Oregon State Bar President President-elect David Wade from Region 2. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Leonie. I would like to endorse everything John Grant said about the Board of Governors and Oregon State Bar staff this year. I would like to add on a personal note that I have learned a tremendous amount about leadership from Leonie Reeves this year. And I look forward to trying to put into place some of those lessons next year. All right, resolution 1 from the Board of Governors. In the HOD meeting in November 2018, 2 years ago, 3 out-of-state delegates, all of them Oregon U lawyers, their names, Jake Klonowski, David Dorfman, and Evan Gauthier, proposed that the Board of Governors review and consider issues of equity in the existing fee structure. And we did. We spent a year looking at that. And last year, 2019, the House of Delegates approved a resolution that the board take steps to move from a system of discount fees based on years of membership to a system of discounts based on income and ability to pay. And to bring back to this meeting a final resolution with respect to any increase in fees based on that structure. So we bring to you today a resolution that 2021 Oregon State Bar member fees for active members under 2 years and for active 50-year members be the same fees as that for other active members. That does result in an increase in their fees, and that's why this is coming to you today. At the same time, the member fees for inactive, retired, and pro bono 50-year members will be the same as those for other inactive, retired, and pro bono members. And again, that means a fee increase because they previously paid no fees. And in return, a reduced fee equivalent to 80% of the regular active member fees will be established for active members with incomes under $40,000 a year. And as you will see on the resolutions page, the financial impact of this is none. That is, the revenue we lose by giving an income-based discount is approximately equal to the revenue we gain by having those first and second year members and 50-year and over members who make $40,000 a year or more pay the same fees as everyone else in their category. I so move.
Thank you, David. We have a motion. Is there a second to a motion? Please raise your hand. I see John Bachhoffner raised his hand and seconded the motion. Now I will open the matter for discussion. First, anybody wishing to speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand now. I recognize Gregory Hoover. So are you Gregory Hoover? You say Jake Klonowski. Okay, so Mr. Hoover, please turn on your video and your audio. Staff will enable your ability to talk, and please introduce yourself and your region.
And we seem to have lost Mr. Hoover.
Okay, so I will come back to Mr. Hoover next time we come to the pro. Is there anybody who wishes to speak at the pro microphone? Jake Klonowski, I recognize you. Please turn on your audio and video and introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes. Did we lose Mr. Klonowski?
I believe I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you to David Wade. I just wanted to express quickly our gratitude to David, obviously, for taking our resolution quite seriously 2 years ago and its request for considerations of equity to play a larger part in board fees. And, you know, it's been quite a 2 years since our resolution was first written, and I'm very grateful that it's found an effective and timely way to be implemented when there's so many lawyers that are really hit hard, I think, by the COVID-19 crisis. So we're grateful that our resolution found an excellent way to be expressed. I just would like to highlight, of course, that one of the original intents of our resolution was to make joining the Oregon State Bar a little bit easier for new attorneys. And yeah, I personally remain committed to that as an issue that matters a great deal to me. But issues of equity at the present moment obviously demand a more big picture consideration for all the problems that all Oregon State Bar members are feeling right now. And we just heard, obviously, from Mr. Grant about the budgetary challenges that are coming about, as well as obviously the reliance on new attorneys that the Oregon State Bar has that should, you know, we should all be considering as we try to find ways to make our profession easier to join and more welcoming. But with that, I do think that this resolution is an excellent expression of equity, and I really endorse highly its passage and express a great deal of gratitude to Mr. Wade and to the Budget Committee, and I look forward to voting in favor of it today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Klonowski. Okay, I will now move to the con microphone, so to speak. So anybody wishing to speak against the motion, Okay, sorry for that. David Wade, if you can hear me, give me a signal. Okay, sorry for that. I got kicked out of my own meeting, but I am back. Okay, so we are on BOG resolution number 1. If there's anybody who wishes to speak against the motion, please raise your hand. I see Gregory Hoover has his hand raised. Mr. Hoover, please enable your audio and video. We can see you, but we
Hi,
cannot.
I'm unmuted now. Am I
There you are.
muted or unmuted?
You're good to go, Mr. Hoover.
Thank you. All right. So I'm looking at this and I wanted to move to amend the last sentence that 80% of the regular active membership will be established for active members with Oregon state income under $40,000. That's my objection.
Mr. Hoover, we're at the con stage, so can
I
you?
wasn't sure if mine was pro or con, but.
Well, it's for the other. So if you have a motion to amend, you do that when we're recognizing the other speakers.
Okay, well, at least I know I can connect now. Sorry to bother you.
Yeah, that's no problem. So actually stay connected because I want to make sure that I didn't see any other con speakers, so we may be able to just move into you. But at this point, if there's anybody in the HOD that would like to speak against this resolution, please raise your electronic hand now. Okay, I don't see anybody who wishes to speak at the con microphone, so we will now move on to other, and I will recognize Mr. Hoover.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, my idea was to amend the last sentence to say members with Oregon state income under 40,000. My name is Gregory Hoover. I'm an out of state, would be Region 8 of the House of Delegates. And I know that the people I represent would like it to say with Oregon state income under $40,000. So I move to amend that the last sentence to state members with Oregon state income under $40,000.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend. Can we please put up on the share screen? And you can also follow along in the voting platform. We will have a text amendment of what the amendment is that is the subject of the motion. And then we'll move on to see if there is a second. So if just give us a little patience. This is all it's all new to us, so we're just going to work our way through it. But we appreciate everybody's patience.
Almost there, everybody. Just one more moment.
Thank you, David. Okay, we now have if you refresh your page, you should be able to see the amended language. And Mr. Hoover, does the language that has been added reflect the motion that you're making? Can we recognize Mr. Hoover just to make sure that we have accurately captured his motion?
Doing that right now.
Thank you.
If he could raise his hand, that would.
His hand is raised.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Go ahead, Mr. Hoover.
To answer your question, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. Okay, so we have a motion to amend resolution, BOG resolution number 1 from Mr. Hoover. I will now ask if there is a second. If you second this motion, please raise your hand. I have a second from Laura Maisel. This is a secondary motion, which means we will address it first while the main motion remains pending. After discussion, we will vote on whether to adopt the amendment. After that, we will return to consideration of the main motion in its original form if the motion to amend fails, and in its amended motion form if the motion passes. So I will now open discussion on whether to adopt the amendment. If you would like to speak in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand now. I recognize Angela Engstrom.
Oh, hold on one second. Hello.
Hi, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Just Angela Engstrom, just here to second the amendment as proposed.
Oh, we already have a second. Did you want to speak in favor of the amendment?
Sorry, no, I was just seconding it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to the microphone. Is there anybody who would like to speak against the motion? I recognize John Bachhoffner.
Good morning. I don't know if I can be seen or heard.
Yes, we can see and hear you, Mr. Bachhoffner. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I elected delegate, out-of-state delegate and former Board of Governors member. I would urge everybody to reject this. And with due respect to Mr. Hoover, I think the unintended, I presume unintended, impact of this would be have a significant financial impact on the bar. Not to mention it defeats the essential purpose of this resolution, which is to provide equity based on the income level. If you change it to only Oregon state income, then the net effect of that would be that anyone who is employed outside the state of Oregon and who does not file Oregon state taxes would qualify for the 80% member fees. Given the significant number of out-of-state lawyers that we have, it's a substantial, I believe it's the largest region that we have, that would have a significant negative impact. It would also be inequitable to the extent that there are members who work outside of the state who have substantial incomes well in excess of $40,000, but would yet qualify for a reduced bar fee. I don't know if that is the intent behind this resolution modification, but that would be unfair to the other bar members who have an income level of under $40,000. While on the Board of Governors opposed removing the free dues for members who had been a member of the bar for 50 years or more, I do support this resolution overall in terms of creating equity and in recognition of the financial impact, both of COVID-19, as well as the various practices that we have. So again, in conclusion, I would ask that everybody reject this amendment, but that they approve when it comes to pass the overall resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bachhoffner. Okay, we're going to go ahead and unraise all of the hands that were in line to speak against the motion, and I will move back to the pro microphone. So if there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand now. I'm sorry, I skipped other. We're going to move to other. So if anybody has an other comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, now I will move back to the pro microphone line. If there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand now. Mr. Hoover, since it's your motion, I'm going to allow you a minute to close. So if you still want to speak now, I'm going to allow you a minute to close, okay? Thank you. Okay, so I will now move back to the con microphone. If you would like to speak against the amendment, please raise your hand now. I recognize Jake Klonowski.
Hey, sorry, takes a second to get unmuted. Yeah, as a Region 8 delegate who would, I guess, benefit from this change, I have to resoundingly push against it in the strongest possible terms. It goes against the whole concept of equity, which I had in mind when I brought the resolution up 2 years ago. And our effort is not intended to be, a fees savings grab by out-of-state lawyers, who some of whom, like myself, are very, blessed in having a solid income base, but is rather intended to help attorneys in financial need. So, as a Region 8 delegate who would benefit from this, I have to, again, push against it, and I would be embarrassed to take it as an out-of-state attorney. And I will hope all the native and practicing Oregonians in the state of Oregon who are paying significant Oregon taxes would recognize the burden shifting here is completely out of line with the concept of equity, and would reject this change while at the same time voting in favor of the overall resolution after we get through this process.
Thank you, Mr. Kanowski. I will now move to the other microphone. If somebody has an other comment, please raise your hand now. John Bachhoffner, I recognize you.
I would call the question.
Okay, so we now have a motion to call the question on a motion for amendment to the main motion. I might need to fall back on my parliamentarian at this point, but I think that I can ask if there's a second to the motion. I see that Eric Foster has seconded the motion to call the question. Are there any objections to the motion to call the question? Please raise your hand now. I recognize Mr. Hoover. Oh,
I'm back.
okay. I'm going to have to ask Lori, do we debate this, or do we just?
No debate, Leonie. The question was called, and a second, I believe.
Okay, and so there has been an objection.
Then you have to vote on calling the question.
So we go ahead and vote on calling the question. Okay.
Requires at least 2/3.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, so we will now vote on a motion to terminate debate. If 2/3 of the delegates voting support the motion, we will end discussion and move to a vote on the underlying motion. If 2/3 of the delegates.
Sorry, what did you have?
What?
No.
Okay, sorry, they were still unmuted. If 2/3 of the delegates do not support terminating debate, discussion will continue. So go ahead and hit refresh. I think that there should be a motion or a space for you to vote on to call the question. Okay, if you hit the refresh page, you should now see a vote on the call of the question. Oh, I think they're still trying to get it. Will delegates see this, David? Okay, I understand it's now on the voting platform. So we will now vote on whether or not to call the question. Please submit your vote. Voting is now closed. Please hit refresh so that we can see the final tally. Okay, the final tally is 145 yes and 5 no. So the motion passes. So that will end debate. We will now proceed back to the main motion. Is that correct, Lori?
No, you have to vote on the amendment.
Sorry. And is there a way to show the results on the share screen?
Leonie, we're trying to work that out right now, and for some reason, it's not showing up here. So
Should be there now. It should be there now.
There we
Can
go.
you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
There it is. Do you see it?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can see it now. No problem. Again, we are all just trying to work through this, so I appreciate everybody's patience. Okay, so now we will proceed back to a vote on the motion for amend. So I think it's going to take staff a minute to get that voting ready. So I will let you know when that's ready, or somebody from staff can let us know when that's ready. Okay, so now we will proceed to vote on whether to adopt the amendment on the resolutions page. Refresh your screen and cast your vote. Okay, voting will close in 5 seconds. Voting is closed, and we'll ask staff to refresh the screen and show the results. Are we looking at the results for the motion on the amendment? Okay, I believe those are still the results for calling the question. So give us a moment to get the results for the motion on the amendment, please. Okay, so we're waiting for the tally on the results. So the motion that we just voted on was a motion on whether or not to adopt the amendment to the main motion. Okay, the results are in, and the motion to adopt, or I'm sorry, the motion to amend the resolution fails. So we will now return to the main motion. We were on the other comments, so I will now move back to the pro comments. If there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of BOG resolution number 1, please raise your hand. I recognize Tina Stupowski.
Hi there, this is Tina. I meant to vote no on the last one. I encourage everyone to vote yes on this one. I accidentally hit yes and meant to vote no.
Thank you. And can you announce your region, please?
Five.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to the con microphone. So if there's anybody who wishes to speak against BOG resolution number 1, please raise your hand now. If we have any comments, other comments or points of order, please raise your hand. I recognize Nicholas Yanchar.
Hi, can everyone see me?
Yes. Go ahead. Introduce yourself and your region, please.
Yes, my name is Nicholas Yancher. I represent Region 5, and I don't have any true comment one way or the other, but I have a question about the clarification of an aspect of this. So we are doing, or the request is to go based on equity based on $40,000 a year. How exactly are we going to police that in terms of proving it? Are we just going to go based on an honor system? Are we going to go based on there being income produced? My concern is that any attorney in any position can say they make less than $40,000 a year if they're not asked to prove it necessarily. Now we're all going to be honest and say if we do, like I will say I make more than $40,000 a year and I have no problem paying more. But I'm concerned that certain individuals may not necessarily be honest with it, or if we have no way to really ensure that it's benefiting the members of the bar that this was intended for. So I'm asking for a clarification on how we're going to police the income requirements for equity. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to ask the presenter of the resolution, David Wade, to speak to that.
Okay, thank you for that question. The answer is that like everything else lawyers are required to do, you're going to be required to certify that your income is less than $40,000. A false certification would subject a lawyer to discipline, possibly severe discipline. So we would expect voluntary compliance to be sufficient. In the unlikely event that someone does try to game the system, the Oregon State Bar can always request their tax return and require them to prove it. But I don't anticipate that happening except in unusual circumstances.
Thank you, David. So I'm going to lower all the hands just so we have a clean slate and then go back to the pro microphone. If anybody would like to speak in favor of BOG resolution number 1, please raise your hand now. I recognize Stephanie Engelsman.
Hi, this is Stephanie Engelsman, Region 5. This is my first meeting, so thank you. I had my hand raised for the other, and then I think my 5-year-old lowered it. I actually do have a question, a clarification question. I don't know if you want to go back to other for me or if I can do that now.
We'll come back to you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so if there's anybody who wishes to speak in favor, we're at the pro microphone stage. If there's anybody who wishes to speak in favor of BOG resolution number 1, please raise your hand now. Okay, is there anybody who wishes to speak against BOG resolution number 1? Please raise your hand. And I will move to the other, and Ms. Engelsman, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, Stephanie Engelsman, Region 5. I do have a question about how the 40,000 was reached and whether there was conversation about how, for equity purposes, and especially some of the lower paid, higher socio-justice jobs, where 40,000 in Multnomah County, for example, will go a lot less than it will in some of the other counties, and whether there was conversation about a different number for some of the larger counties where salaries are still low, but living expenses and other expenses are much higher. So just a question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I will also pass that on to Mr. Wade.
Yes, the Budget and Finance Committee spent about a year studying this with great many alternatives. And we based this 40,000 on the member survey, which some of you may have participated in. We do it every, I think, 5 years. We do a member survey of salaries by location and other demographics. And this number allowed us to do this, right? If the number were higher or lower, it would cause budget changes. As for trying to adjust for cost of living, that's beyond us. We just don't have the capacity to do that. The other thing is, no matter where you live, if you're making less than $40,000 a year in Oregon, it's not going to be easy on you.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Okay, so now we're going to go back. If we could lower all the hands, we're going to go back to the pro microphone. I will ask if there's anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the resolution. Please raise your hand. I will now go to the con microphone. If there's anyone wishing to speak against the motion, please raise your hand. Okay, and now we are back to the other microphone. If you have an other comment or question, please raise your hand. I recognize Benjamin Hale. And please don't forget to introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Benjamin Hale, Board of Governors, Region 5. And Mr. Wade mentioned that there was some debate about the decision to remove the reduced fee for the 50-year members of the bar. And I am sad that that was the way that this resolution came through, because I really think it's important to honor our 50-year members. And I also think many of them are retired, but still have a tremendous amount to contribute to the bar in terms of a reduced practice, perhaps, and wisdom. And I would not want to push them out of the practice of law in any way. And moreover, I think many of them have assumed throughout their possibly 50 years of membership that this benefit was coming to them, that the bar has traditionally honored our senior members by reducing their fee. And so I'm sad to see that go. And overall, I think this resolution is a great step forward, and I still support it. But if I could hear some explanation for that choice, I would like to hear it. I think probably many people would support even a slight bar dues increase in order to fund this instead of an increase just to the 50-year members. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Hale. I'm going to ask when Mr. Wade uses his 1 minute to wrap up, he can choose to respond to that question. So if we lower the hands, I'm going to go back to the pro microphone. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. I recognize Ron Chang.
Let's see. Hopefully at this point you guys can see and hear me.
We can see and hear you. Welcome, Mr. Chang. Please introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, President. Ron Chang, Region 5. I just want to respond to the last comment about 50 years. Based on my observation, I would say that many attorneys don't even really get into their stride in terms of success until they hit their 50s, with the majority of partners being at most major firms probably being of that 50+ age. I think with how things are going, which people are working later and later, you're probably arguably at your most successful and financially viable once you hit the 50s. So I'm actually shocked to find out that they previously had a discount. And I would urge my colleagues to vote for this resolution because I think the 50-year mark in many ways is almost too low. So I'm just responding to the last commentator. I appreciate and understand the respect for the elders, but I mean, 50 years, I mean, I think many people are just really getting into their stride at that point. So I'm pro this resolution. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. And just to clarify, the 50 years is 50 years of practicing law. It is not 50 years of age.
Oh, that changes everything. Ignore everything I just said. Sorry about that.
Thank you. And sorry for any confusion. Okay, so now we will go to the con microphone. If anybody wishes to speak against the resolution, please raise your hand now. And now I will move to the other microphone. If there's anybody who wishes to speak to the other, please raise your hand. I recognize Victory Walker.
Good morning. Can you see me?
We cannot see you. We can hear you.
All right. I've hit to unable. Let's try it again.
There you go. There you are.
Good morning. This is Victory Walker, Region 3. I call the question.
Oops, sorry. Okay, thank you. So we now have a motion to call the question. Is there a second to that motion?
I had to duck out because I actually chose to speak on the proposal.
Okay, Mr. Hale, can you mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, I see Jennifer Nichols has seconded the motion. Are there any objection? Okay, we're going to clear the hands raised now. Thank you. Are there any objections to calling the questions? Please raise your hand now. Okay, we have unanimous consent to calling the question. That makes a vote unnecessary. We will now move to a vote on BOG resolution number 1. So give staff a minute to go ahead and get the voting platform ready, and then we will go ahead and vote on BOG resolution number 1. Okay, so we will proceed to a vote on BOG resolution number 1. please turn to the resolution page of your HOD voting dashboard, hit the refresh button, then indicate your vote. Yes, if you support the resolution, no, if you oppose it, and abstain if you prefer not to vote. Again, your vote is final once you submit it. Okay, I believe we are viewing the results from voting on BOG resolution number 1, and the motion passes. All right, thank you. So we've gotten through one resolution. Hopefully we will be perfecting this process as we go. We're going to move on to BOG resolution number 2, and to present that, I'd like to welcome back John Grant from Region 5.
Thank you, Leonie. I'm unable to start my video. Says that the host has stopped it. There we go. Thank you. All right. Hello again, everybody. I do love, as someone who pays a lot of attention to the legal technology world, that the technological baseline for the whole legal system has jumped up considerably in the last 7 months. So that is a bit of a silver lining. I know it's a learning curve, but thank you all for your patience as we move on to this new system. Moving on to the motion, I think I explained our rationale behind this proposed fee increase pretty well in the budget and finance report. I want to reiterate that the BOG takes our obligation to use the bar's resources wisely, very seriously, because most of our revenue comes from mandatory membership fees. Being a good steward of those fees is very important. When the board first came to the HOD in 2015, it was the first time we'd requested a fee increase in 10 years. At that time, the board forecast that it would be able to maintain existing programming for another 5 years without a fee increase. We honored that commitment. Last year at the HOD meeting, we projected that we would likely need a $45 fee increase for 2021. And despite all of the sort of changes and unforeseen things that have hit us in the past year, that $45 increase is what we're bringing to you today. As I said, right, a lot of other sources of revenue for the bar have dropped. So, even this $45 increase does reflect some significant belt tightening on behalf of the bar, and the Budget and Finance Committee has looked at all of this very closely. The sort of late breaking change where the board of directors from the Professional Liability Fund decided to basically eliminate that $200,000 grant for bar books, did come as a bit of a surprise to us, and we worked with them to try to maintain that subsidy, but they determined that it was in their interest to eliminate that. So if you feel strongly about bar books, as I do, and have questions or comments about that PLF change, I encourage you to reach out to the board of directors members of the PLF. But for our purposes, we do have to cover that shortfall now. And so the $45 increase is sufficient to do that. As I said in the budget and finance report, that will be offset by a reduction in the client security fund assessment. Just so we're clear, the client security fund assessment is something that is totally within control of the Board of Governors. But we have voted as a Board of Governors to reduce the CSF assessment from $50 last year down to $30 this year. And if you'll recall, part of the reason that it had been bumped up was that we had a lot of claims related to one particular lawyer that caused a lot of harm and heartbreak for her clients, unfortunately. We're able to reduce the CSF assessment. And then again, as I said, we also will be increasing the CSF benefit starting in 2022, or the fee cap for people that have been harmed by their lawyers starting in 2022. So again, I'll keep it short because I know that some of the comments might take a while, but I move to approve a $45 member fee increase to $532 for general active members and equivalent increases for inactive, retired, and pro bono members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. We have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion? I see Tom Feely seconded the motion. So we'll now move on to discussion. If we could lower all the hands. Okay, so we will start with those who would like to speak in favor of the motion. Please raise your hand. I recognize David Wade.
Okay, David Johnson's going to have to let me in here.
Go ahead, David, you're on.
We can hear you. We just can't see David.
Okay.
There you are.
So I was Budget and Finance Chairman for the 2 years before John took over. And I would just like to, number one, endorse this fee increase. We held it off as long as we could, and we can't hold it off any longer. I would like to just add that in order to reduce the client security fund fee, we took $500,000 in stock market gains and pumped them into the client security fund to cover those claims from that one lawyer, which topped $1 million. And because we did that, or were able to do that, we were able to reduce the client security fund assessment this year. So I fully support this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. We will now move on to the comments. If you would like to speak against BOG resolution number 2, please raise your hand now. All right, I see no hands raised. We will now move to the other comments. If you'd like to speak to the other comments or questions or motions, please raise your hand now. Okay, I will move back to the pro microphone. If there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of the motion or of the resolution number 2, please raise your hand now. I'll move to the con. If there's anybody who would like to speak against, please raise your hand. And then I'll move to the other. If there's any other comments or questions, please raise your hand. I recognize Victory Walker.
Victory Walker, Region 3, call a question.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Is there a second? Eric DeFriest has seconded the motion. Please lower all the hands, and I will ask if there are any objections to calling the question. Okay, seeing no objections, it's unanimous and no vote is necessary on calling the question. We will go ahead and vote on BOG resolution number 2. So please turn to the resolutions page of your HOD voting dashboard, hit the refresh button, then indicate your vote, yes to support the resolution, no if you oppose it, and abstain if you would prefer not to vote. And voting will close in 5 seconds. Voting is now closed. We'll go ahead and refresh the results to see the final tally. Thank you. The motion passes. All right, next up is Delegate Resolution number 1, which will be presented by Danny Lang. So Mr. Lang, please enable your audio and your video, introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes to present your resolution.
Are we looking at some kind of slides, some kind of presentation?
Good morning, Mr. Lang.
Talking to you, Danny.
What? They're talking to you. You're up. Good morning. This is Danny Lang, Region 3 ex officio delegate. Good morning, fellow delegates and members of the Board of Governors. I'm here to present a resolution that's based on sustainability as well as conservation of natural resources. It's Delegate Resolution number 1, and the purpose is to use modern technology, both teleconferencing and video technology of the kind we're using this morning, to make routine court appearances much more efficient. It just happens that this year we had the COVID-19 that compelled more of these Zoom or teleconference appearances, as we're doing. But in the past, this has come to mind, and the genesis of this resolution comes back to a couple of cases that I handled. One was a firefighter who was from out of state, and he had to appear at a trial reset. The court was not available, and so we had to get a new trial date. And he drove 13 hours straight, not to mention safety, to come to court. The appearance took 3 minutes. He's already had a proposed trial date. So he stood next to me, and we changed the date from whatever it was that the court was not available, and got it. And he turned around and had to go 13 hours driving back. At 12 miles to one, figured 26 hours of driving. He used 130 gallons of fossil fuel, irreplaceable, and it'd be 26 of these 5-gallon containers of gasoline that could have been saved, not to mention the congestion in court parking lots, going through security, and sometimes people do have colds or TB or other communicable diseases. So that can be minimized if we make it a protocol. The normal would be teleconference or video. And there's, for example, one way it's been implemented in Douglas County is we have members on jury panels call a codophone 72 hours before a court date. And if their name is not mentioned in their juror number, then they don't need to show up. So there's some methodologies that can be adopted here. The persons who have to show up also experience wage loss, sometimes loss of a new job where they're not allowed to be absent, child care expenses. So this impacts minorities, low-income people, as well as makes an unnecessary use of fossil fuel to, whether you're for climate change or not, 26 hours of that exhaust pipe running, burning up this fuel that could have been avoided was a waste of natural resources, violates the sustainability futures section in the natural conservation section of the state bar. So I'm moving that the House of Delegates simply encourages the use of technology to effectuate remote court appearances via video and or teleconferencing as the normal protocol for routine appearances. This is civil and criminal, with in-person appearances being the protocol when matters to be considered do require in-person court appearances. And so I would so move adoption of delegate resolution number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. We have a motion. Do I have a second for the motion? Please raise your hand. All right, I have a second from Randy Harvey. Thank you. We will now move into discussion. Please lower all the hands. Okay, now if you would wish to speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. I recognize Gregory Hoover.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hoover. Don't forget to introduce yourself again in your region.
Yep, Gregory Scott Hoover, Region 8, out-of-state attorneys. Sorry about the background noise. There's construction going on in my new building. I am in favor of this resolution as I travel to the Portland area often from the Seattle area as I'm licensed in both states. I can tell you that in Washington State, they have utilized Zoom very well. It has worked very effectively. Oregon is not up to speed. That my Oregon cases, I've had to go down there during the pandemic. I use a face shield, a mask, gloves, and as well as the jail system. You can't communicate with inmates other than being there in person, which is dangerous for everyone. So I am in favor of this. I think the state of Oregon needs to talk to its neighbor up north. They can call me anytime, my office. I'm very familiar with Zoom. And, we need to utilize the computer technology to beat this virus. It's that simple. And I can understand trials have to be in person. Jury or bench makes a lot of sense. But if we have motions to continue, motions for summary judgment, motions that wouldn't require people to be there in person as a final resolution of a case, it would just be beneficial to everyone, the judges, the court staff, the attorneys, the clients, the victims, everyone, to be able to appear by Zoom and get it resolved that way. So I am in favor of this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hoover. Okay, we're going to lower all the hands and move to the con discussion. So if there's anybody who would like to speak against House HOD Resolution number 1, please raise your hand now. All right, I see no hands raised. I will move to the other comments or points of order. Please raise your hand. John Bachhoffner, I recognize you.
Thank you. I kind of on the fence on this just for one reason, and that is because it's just an advisory sort of vote. It has no binding effect. I also heard from Chief Justice Walters earlier that she's very focused on improving this. I agree with Mr. Hoover that this is something we need to move towards better. And I also just want to commend Danny Lang on his continued involvement. I think this is a good idea. Again, I'm just not sure whether or not it's really a necessary resolution under the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bachhoffner. We'll go ahead and move back to the pro microphone. If you'd like to speak in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. I recognize Jacqueline Mitchson.
Hi there, this is Jackie Mitchson, Region 5, House of Delegates member. Sorry, I've got my baby here with me. She's distracting. I wanted to speak in favor of the resolution. I understand under the current circumstances with COVID, it might not be the most necessary thing, but I think in the long run, this is something that everyone in the state and out of state who practices with an Oregon license could benefit from. in terms of not having to spend so much time driving between different courthouses when you have various counties that you practice in, as well as for clients to not have to make the trip and miss work, which is a huge problem for criminal defendants, I understand, who are trying to hold down a job and make their court appearances. So I think this is something that our BOG should spend some time thinking about how we can work with the courts to implement more remote means for routine appearances. I agree that things like summary judgment can be done remotely while trials can't. But overall, I think it makes sense to figure out ways that we can spend less time traveling and save our natural resources with climate change. I think that's very important. And I appreciate that this resolution or that this idea has been brought forward. So thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Okay, we will move to the con microphone. If there's anybody who would like to speak against the resolution, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll move back to the other. Anybody who wishes to make a comment or other. Sonia Montalbano, I recognize you.
Okay, yeah, I just want to call the question.
Okay, and can you introduce yourself and your region, please?
Oh, sorry, Sonia Montalbano, Region 5.
Thank you. So we have a motion to call the question. Is there a second to the motion? Okay, I see there's a second by Scott Rennie. So we're gonna lower all the hands now, and I will ask if there are any objections. If there are any objections to calling the question, please raise your hand. Okay, since it's unanimous, no vote is necessary. We will go ahead and call the question and turn to a vote on the underlying motion. Please be sure that the resolution on your screen includes the correct voting options. If not, go ahead and hit refresh and then make your selection. Okay, voting will close in 5 seconds. Voting is now closed, and if we could go ahead and see the final tally, please. Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Okay, we will move on to delegate resolution number, resolution number 2 was excluded from the agenda. So we're going to go ahead and take up delegate resolution number 3, which will be presented by Danny Lang. Thank you, Mr. Lang. And we're ready for you, Mr. Lang. You have 5 minutes to present your resolution.
Thank you. Good morning again. Danny Lang, Region 3 ex officio delegate. I'm going to make a bit of an analogy here to the medical profession. And when a surgeon is doing an operation, he often has the anesthesiologist present, should have, and the surgical nurse and the assistant surgeon. And so when we're in trial, doing a complicated case or in motion practice, I had a case that I think the highest number I had was 312 exhibits. Defense had 104 exhibits. And sometimes the witness testifies about something that was covered in one of the several volumes of a deposition. There's no way that I can continue direct or cross-examination of the witness when I want to refer to, maybe it's exhibit 112 or 108, or a statement of the witness. We get a recess, go out to the conference room, have a paralegal that's sitting in the gallery go out with me, and I say, is it exhibit 108 or 113? Get it out, please, so I can bring it back in and address the court and the witness with this exhibit, or refer to the deposition excerpt. With that regard, I did found the Umpqua Community College paralegal program, and I'm still active with that program and have endowed it. I think that the bar recently was looking at limited licensed legal technicians. I'm not going there, that's a separate topic, but conceptually the idea is to have competent professional assistants. They're in my office, they make the exhibits, label them, serve motions, build a trial binder. And I would like those people to be literally at my right hand as they are in my office. So why would it be that I'm in court and I don't have full resources? Getting back to the doctor, I don't want the doctor during surgery to have to say, excuse me, I need to step out of the operating theater to go find the nurse with the heart to be transplanted and bring her in with the heart and put it in and then go back out. I know that's a bit, I think that it's time that the previously male-dominated men in the courtroom, we start recognizing that paralegals, and they can be male, female, I'm not trying to interject gender here, other than I'd like to have opportunities for paralegals, some of which may join us in the future. I've seen that happen through the paralegal program I started. Several are now members of the Oregon State Bar. But I would like to have a policy where we don't have to seek individual case-by-case ad hoc permission from a trial court. So I'm going to move that the House of Delegates recommends reforms. These could be done through the Uniform Trial Court Rules Committee, the Council on Court Procedures, to allow Oregon State Bar member lawyers to be personally assisted in Oregon courtrooms by lawyers supervised paralegals who would be seated. They'd be in the company of a member of the bar at the counsel table, and they would assist in the manner that I have mentioned, finding citations of case law and previous briefs, deposition excerpts, exhibits to be introduced, and assist in presenting questions that maybe have been previously asked of a witness and are now giving contradictory testimony. Really would like to have the benefit of these paralegals in today's world. I think it improves access to justice, reduces the costs. I don't have to prepare every one of these things and have a memory of every exhibit and every deposition excerpt. I do that in the staff, and then the staff is with me, and they can assist me at the moment that assistance becomes critical for access to justice, and to zealously represent my clients in the most competent manner I can as a member of this Oregon State Bar, which I'm proud to be. So I'm moving Delegate Resolution number 2, which is lawyer support by paralegals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. We have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion? Please raise your hand. John Bachhoffner has seconded the motion. We will move on to discussion. We will start with the pro microphone. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak in favor of the motion. I recognize Nicholas Yanchar.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Wonderful.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Nicholas Yanchar, Region 5. So I definitely want to put my input on this and supporting this resolution. So I myself have a background in paralegal. I have a 4-year degree in paralegal studies, and I was a paralegal for about 5-6 years before I went to law school. I was in Ohio, and I worked at a pretty high volume PI firm where, at least in Ohio, and I guess I didn't realize that there was, that paralegals couldn't join counsel at the tables here. I just haven't had that situation yet here, so I'd have to worry about it. But when I was there, I definitely helped my attorney a lot. I had gone to trials. I'd helped with voir dire. I helped, watching, reactions, watching how people react to certain questions. I had everything prepped and ready. It made for seamless interactions. As someone who has been a former paralegal, and I've also, taught paralegal classes and helped with training new paralegals in my past, I think this is a very, very good thing. If nothing else, you don't need necessarily a second attorney at that table to sitting there playing the part of a paralegal role, when that attorney could be totally affecting their practice and their skills, helping clients that aren't in that courtroom right at that very moment, if you have a lead attorney who has a very supportive paralegal by his or her side. So I definitely think that this is a great idea. It's a great step forward. I'm once again surprised that it wasn't issued to begin with. I guess I was naive to that, but I strongly believe that anybody who has paralegals or has staff, this is a great way to utilize them. It's a great way to help kind of mold and shift paralegals to become attorneys like I did. It's a good way to kind of get their experience in there. And then if they decide not to go to law school, which, sometimes people go to law school and realize it's not for them, it's kind of helpful to have a paralegal in that situation to understand that. So I will say that if you've never thought about it, think about it. But I think this is a great resolution and a great step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yanchar. So we'll go ahead and move to the con microphone. If there's anybody who would like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand. I recognize Christopher Larson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris Larson, elected delegate, Region 5. I have nothing against paralegals. I think they're great to be able to help out trial counsel, but I think this is the wrong resolution at the wrong time. Table at council space is at a premium, especially with COVID. And if you have 6 feet between people at council table, this is just, it's not feasible in these times. So I suggest that it's just untimely and unworkable right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. We'll go ahead and move to the other microphone. If there are other comments or points of order, please raise your hand. John Bachhoffner.
Thank you. Another interesting proposal from Mr. Lang. I like the idea of it. While I understand the concern raised just a moment ago about the COVID concerns, I think that's going to be controlled by the judge. There's a requirement for social distancing. So that does not concern me. My question is to Danny, why is it just paralegals versus paralegals or other support staff? I'm wondering, some people who may not have a paralegal but has an assistant who could perform the same functions, why you would not want to allow then an assistant for maybe somebody who can't afford to have a paralegal as part of their staff.
Thank you, Mr. Bachhoffner. Mr. Lang, I'm going to allow you to respond very briefly to that if you would like.
May I respond as the presenter of the resolution?
Yes, briefly, please.
Actually, I use that just simply as a starting point that the UCC, Umpqua Community College, grants an associate degree, 2-year degree in paralegal studies. There are other colleges, I think there's a Pacific up in the Portland area that also has a paralegal program. And so I thought that would be one measure of competency. I'm not limiting it to that. I believe in the motion it would be or the equivalent. So certainly when I was a brand new attorney and I hired what was then called a legal secretary with an IBM Selectric typewriter, going back in time, she knew far more than I did about court proceedings, and she had like 13 years of experience. So I had to practice with her assistants. That may be a person that this can be worked out where they can become qualified, or through simply the attorney who supervised them is going to be responsible in representing the court that they have sufficient background, training, and experience to assist. So I think it's not limited to people with a paralegal degree or a paralegal license, but the equivalent And we rely on our bar members' good judgment. Of course, the court is in charge. If something isn't working, the court can sort. Let's hope that we'll have a vaccine and we'll be able to implement this for the future, not just around social distancing, which would be an accommodation at this time. Thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. We'll go ahead and move back to the pro line. If there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. I recognize Randy Harvey.
Yes, I'd like to speak to this resolution. I'm in favor of Danny's resolution because it reduces cost of having a second attorney in complex cases. Also, the client is better served in getting assistance to their attorney without paying the cost of having another attorney present. I'm for anything that's going to support a client's issues in the courtroom. And I think this is very apropos. I don't know that it necessarily has to be a certified paralegal, since we don't really have those in the state of Oregon. But I do think it's essential that we provide the best services to our clients that we can. And for those of us who've tried cases in court, it's very important to have documents at your fingertips and to have assistance in trying your cases. For that reason, I urge that we vote yes on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. We'll go ahead and move to the con microphone. If you'd like to speak against, go ahead and raise your hand. I recognize Arias Johnson. Mr. Johnson, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
How you doing, Arias Johnson? Uncontested Region 6. I don't really thinking a con. I guess just my issue was the word paralegal. And if you're providing, if they're supervised by a lawyer, I just have a problem with having the actual word paralegal, because I feel like it's going to put another, hurdle in the place of individuals trying to enter the profession. So if we can just have individuals who are just properly supervised by attorneys, I just feel like that's a language that's broader and will trying to serve the purpose of not only the client, reducing fees that the court, lawyers have to pay as far as salaries, but also widening the net for getting individuals into the profession itself. So not really a con, just maybe a tweak to the language.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So I will move now to the other microphone. If anybody would like to make a comment or other type of motion, please go ahead and raise your hand now. Okay, I'll move back to the pro microphone. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor, please raise your hand. Moving to the con microphone. Anybody who wishes to speak against, please raise your hand. I recognize Timothy Bobine.
Hello, I'm Tim Bobian, bar president for Judicial District 24. And my main concern about this, I think there are many admirable things, but my main concern has to do with reasonableness of attorney fees. And if it becomes the norm to have paralegals at counsel table, that having two attorneys at counsel table will be deemed unreasonable, and when it comes to billing clients and or the award of costs from the other side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bobian. I will move now to the other microphone. If anybody has other comments, please raise your hand. I recognize Tom Feely.
I call for the question.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Feely. We have a motion to call for the question. Is there a second to that motion? I see a second by Michelle Blatch-Ing. Thank you. I will now ask if there are any objections to calling the question. Please raise your hand. Okay, there are no objections. It's unanimous and no vote is necessary. We will now turn to a vote on the underlying motion. So please be sure to go back to your resolution page and hit refresh, and we'll allow for, some time for voting. I'll allow 15 seconds as long as somebody signals to me that the voting has been activated. So maybe someone can send me a text to make sure that the voting page has been activated. Okay, the voting page is definitely activated. I'm going to close voting in 15 seconds. So go ahead and make sure that you cast your votes. Okay, voting is now closed. We'll go ahead and please hit the refresh and we'll see the final tally. All right, thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Lang. So we're going to move on to agenda item 11, which is delegate resolution number 4. And here to present will be our past president, many past presidents actually, Vanessa Nordyke, Ed Harnden, and Ross Williamson, who will be here to present delegate resolution number 4. So give us a minute to get them on screen for you.
Okay, can folks hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Nordyke.
All right, good morning, everyone. I want to start off by thanking our bar president, Leonie Reeves, our board of governors, and our bar staff for stepping up during challenging times indeed. Well done to all of you, and thank you for your leadership. I understand what you're going through to a certain extent, having served as bar president in 2018, but this year has been extraordinary, as we all know. After completing my term as bar president, I joined the Salem City Council. I mention that because this role has shown me the need for funding legal aid in new and different ways. My city, like cities around Oregon, is tackling a variety of challenges which disproportionately impact low-income Oregonians. This includes the pandemic, the financial toll of the pandemic, calls for racial justice, an affordable housing shortage, a lack of mental health care, a lack of affordable child care, and the devastation wrought by wildfires. Now more than ever, legal services for low-income people is a statewide imperative. Legal aid programs help our most vulnerable Oregonians obtain access to our legal system by assisting clients with wide-ranging issues: domestic violence, housing, income maintenance, Social Security, access to food, medical help are essential needs. This is even more true because of the incredible circumstances we find ourselves in with the pandemic and the wildfires. So it is my privilege to present this resolution to you today, along with Ross Williamson, to support funding for legal services for low-income Oregonians. Regrettably, Ed Harnden, one of our past colleagues on the board, cannot join us today. Now, many of you are already longtime supporters of the Campaign for Equal Justice, and I applaud you for that. And as you may know, this is CEJ's 30th anniversary. This is something that we should be celebrating. And while I cannot celebrate in person with you today, we can do something, and that is to vote to support this resolution. And we should do so unanimously. There is a great deal of background information in the resolution, which I encourage you to read, and I will not repeat here. As lawyers, we have a professional obligation to make sure that everyone has access to justice. It is vitally important that our system of justice function fairly. Studies show that the public perception of the justice system improves if they have access to a lawyer. In the past 29 years, our legal community has raised more than $30 million in support of legal aid. This should be a shining beacon of hope and an example for states around the country. But our work is not done. We need your help. After boots on the ground, we need suits on the ground. Legal aid offices serving every region of our state are providing critical legal services for Oregonians who are suffering from the pandemic, the wildfires, and everything else that 2020 has thrown at us. They are doing things like representing domestic violence survivors who have been trapped with their abusers. They're representing tenants whose landlords are using unusual means to evict them in the violation of the moratorium on evictions. Our legal aid lawyers are representing people who have lost their jobs, who are struggling to obtain unemployment benefits. They're representing tenants and homeowners who have been affected by the wildfires, and much more. The national standards recommend 2 legal aid lawyers for every 10,000 low-income people to be minimally adequate. The current ratio, though, in Oregon is 2 legal aid lawyers for every 14,400 people. These are the things we can all do to increase access to justice to our most vulnerable neighbors. I will now turn this over to my co-presenter, Ross Williamson, with our call to action. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, everyone. Very quickly, Ross Williamson, elected delegate from Region 2. I would like to thank Ed Herndon again. He is no longer a member of this body, the HOD. After 25 years, he's actually given up and passed the torch on to the younger generation. So thanks, Ed, for all his service to the CEJ and for the HOD and the bar at large. I am here to call you all to action. The first action you can do, of course, is vote in favor of this resolution. This is not simply a ceremonial resolution. This is actually something that CEJ uses for our fundraising. So please vote in favor, and also please donate. In this age of COVID, we can just go online. There's no checks involved. Just go online to cej-oregon.org and hit the green donate button at the very top. It's very easy. Get your colleagues to donate as well. And I know I'm out of time, and so I will move for adoption of Delegate Resolution number 4, Ross Williamson, HOD delegate from Region 2.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson and Ms. Nordyke. So we have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion? I see Christopher Larson has seconded the motion. Thank you. Moving on to any debate or discussion, we will start with the pro.
I will second that motion.
I'm sorry? Christopher Larson seconded the motion. Okay, could we go ahead and lower the hands? Thank you. And we'll go ahead and move to debate. So if you would like to speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand now. If you would like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand now. If you would like to speak to the other comment, please raise your hand. Okay, since there's no discussion, we will go ahead and vote on Delegate Resolution number 4. Please turn to the resolutions page of your HOD voting dashboard, hit the refresh button, then indicate your vote. Yes, if you support the resolution, no if you oppose it, and abstain if you prefer not to vote. So go ahead and please turn to the voting. Okay, I'll close the voting in 15 seconds. Thank you. We'll go ahead and refresh the tally. And the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is Delegate Resolution number 5. And we will welcome back Danny Lang to present us Delegate Resolution number 5. Mr. Lang, you have 5 minutes.
What's up? She doesn't.
And Ms. Hollister, can you please, thank you.
I'm sorry, am I being called to speak at this time?
Yes, Mr. Lang, you're up. Go ahead.
Okay. Danny Lang, Region 3 ex officio delegate, and I am the presenter of Delegate Resolution number 5. The concept here is that I'm proposing we have the Committee on Appellate Procedure take another look at the procedure when there is judicial review of an administrative agency proceeding. Now, the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, covers many agencies in Oregon, and those matters are typically not subject to a jury trial or to open court proceedings. There may involve an administrative law judge conducting a hearing. And so there are some things that distinguish agency proceedings from open court proceedings, from the full umbrella of civil discovery. For example, requests for admissions are not something available in agency proceedings. Motions for summary judgment are not available. And we don't have the benefit of local circuit court judges who at least have likely been elected or reelected, and so are better known and are in the communities they serve. The agencies do a lot of work, I'm going to say, behind closed doors. You have staff people, and you have them interpreting questions of fact, interpreting standards, making administrative interpretations of administrative rules. And so it becomes even more elastic when we go to the concept of substantial evidence in the record. That's pretty elastic. And so I've seen cases where there was not substantial evidence in the record, but nonetheless, the agency, for either agency overreach or appointed members, politically appointed members who are not members of the Oregon State Bar, likely may not even have any legal training, and have somewhat of an agenda of enforcing agency rules and so on. So I think that middle class and low income Oregonians are not served by the appellate court's devastating an appeal, which is really, it's like an appeal, but it's a judicial review of agency action with an AWOP, an affirmance without opinion. A small grocery, a barber shop, a massage therapist, those folks can lose their livelihood, their income. And so when they have so much at stake and they hire one of our members to present their case, it's a lot of work. It's very similar to an appellate brief for those of you who haven't practiced in that area. And to take it to the Court of Appeals and then have the Court of Appeals simply affirm without opinion. But one of the problems is the APA statute does not provide for a permanent affirmance without opinion. It's only found in the Oregon Rules of Appellate Procedure, and I only places where it was cited, I believe it's 6.25 and 4.05. And so I think it's a committee-driven download, if you will, from the APA statute. OS 183.482 in contested cases does not mention affirmance without opinion. The Oregon Constitution Bill of Rights, Section 10, also provides that courts shall not be in secret. When we have an affirmed without opinion, we don't know what the factors were. I think in the interest of access to justice, the Committee for Oregon Appellate Rules Committee should take another look. It's hard to go back to someone like Mr. Ruggiero, and as a lead case, I would say those of you who want to get a good overview of this area is Ruggiero versus Teacher Standards and Practice Commissions, 312 Oregon 402. A case that was largely on
wrap up and
hearsay.
make your motion, Mr. Lang.
All right, then I'm going to move that the House of Delegates recommends to the Oregon Rules of Appellate Procedure Committee to take a look at amendment to their procedures for issuance of an appellate opinion or basis, some stated basis factors in a contested case involving judicial review administrative proceedings. Take a look at citing a basis or an opinion rather than an AWOP in this subspecies of judicial review for access to justice and not discriminating against low-income people, small business people, professionals like us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Lang has moved delegate resolution number 5. Do I have a second, please? Raise your hand. I have a second from Joseph Connolly. Thank you. We will now move on to discussion. So go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to speak in favor of the motion. I'll move on to the con microphone. If you'd like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand. I recognize Giovanna Patrick.
Hello, thank you. I'm Giovanna Patrick from Region 5. I oppose the motion. I'm a workers' compensation attorney, and we sometimes end up at the Court of Appeals after getting a written opinion and order, very detailed, from the administrative law judge, and then a written, very detailed opinion and order from the Workers' Compensation Board. I can tell you the last time I was at the Court of Appeals, I was respondent, so my client had won twice already, and it was not AWOP'd, and it took us 28 months from the date of appeal to get a decision. 28 months that my claimant was not getting any benefits. Now, if it had been AWOP'd, that time would have reduced significantly. And so there's a huge advantage to having an AWOP in that situation, in an agency decision that is well explained. And people are going to have to wait longer for decisions if there are not AWOPs available, which will not serve access to justice. The majority in workers' comp appeals are often claimants who have lost below and are looking for a decision. And, you know, that has been explained multiple times, and there's still a benefit to having a quick decision, even if it is an AWOP of the underlying. So I oppose this motion, as I do not think it will serve the intended result of benefiting claimants and their access to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrick. We'll go ahead and move to the other microphone. If you'd like to make a comment or have an other, please raise your hand. I recognize Matthew Barber.
Hello, Matthew Barber, Chair of the Administrative Law Section. After reviewing the resolution, we would like to propose an amendment. The resolution strikes us as being somewhat undeveloped for the House of Delegates consideration. What we would like to propose is that the resolution be amended to direct this issue to the section to work with the appellate committee to pull together a work group of practitioners, law judges, members of the Court of Appeals if appropriate, their staff, and law professors, as our section has done on many issues involving the practice of administrative law in Oregon, to further develop this concept. The resolution claims that there's no fiscal impact. However, it does seem to be known that Oregon has one of the busiest appellate courts in the country, and AWOPs are one way in which the court deals with the large amount of cases that come to it. If we instead have the court having to address every contested case, final Oregon contested case that comes before it, that just increases their workload. That could have a negative impact on access to justice, as it could further delay the amount of time it takes a petitioner to get a ruling in a matter. It could also increase costs. I don't know that that's beneficial to anyone. Also, there are a lot of folks who represent themselves in these cases. These cases may not be very well developed. There is the old saw that bad cases can result in bad law. So there may be times where it's appropriate to have a decision affirmed without an opinion, rather than developing a case that might not either be very beneficial to practitioners or members of the public, or really contribute anything to the development of administrative law. Also, it seems like one of the concerns that this resolution is trying to address is agency directors or appointed officials potentially overruling a legally trained hearings officer or administrative law judge. While that, of course, may rankle some practitioners, those appointed officials are politically accountable. That is part of their authority, and this resolution would not change that authority at all. So again, we would recommend amending the resolution to address the issues mentioned at the start of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. And a couple of clarification points. Are you asking for, are you moving as a delegate member personally to amend the resolution?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And we need your proposed amended language, please, so that we can get that up for people to consider.
All right. And do I just enter that in the chat box, or do I email that to somebody specific?
I think that we're going to put the actual resolution text up. We'll share the screen, and then you will need to very slowly and clearly explain to us what your amendment is. Okay, so go ahead and say, please, what it is that you would like to include in your motion to amend, sir.
All right. Beginning with recommends, after the House of Delegates recommends, delete the rest of the line in the remaining 3 lines and insert, so it would read as House of Delegates requests or directs, how about that? Directs the administrative law section to organize a work group to consider and offer recommendations to the House of Delegates on issues involving judicial review of final orders in contested case proceedings.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We've kind of got behind you on transcribing that.
Oh.
So if you can take another pass at that, that would be helpful.
All right.
Yes, please go ahead and restate your amendment.
Okay. How about have it read as the House of Delegates directs the administrative law section.
Sorry, give us a minute. There's a bit of a lag time.
Okay, I think we can proceed. Directs the
Mr. Lang, can you go ahead
section.
and mute your microphone, please? Thank you. Okay, sorry. Go ahead and restate your amendment.
All right. The House of Delegates directs the administrative law section to organize a work group of practitioners, administrative law judges, law professors, court staff, and others as appropriate to.
Just a second there.
Right.
Practitioners, administrative law judges. Court staff and others. What was that last phrase, please?
And others as appropriate. Fortunately, Amber she transcribed it in the text box. As appropriate to review and consider issues involving judicial review of final orders in contested case proceedings.
Final orders in contested case proceedings.
With the intent of making recommendations to the House of Delegates at its.
Hold on.
Okay.
To the House of Delegates.
At its next meeting in 2021.
I think we got it. Just a moment to make that visible to everybody, and we should see. We should see the new language displayed there at the final paragraph. We don't quite have the strikeout clearly indicated yet, but I think that's coming.
Okay, so Mr. Barber, please review and see if that accurately reflects the motion to amend that you're trying to make.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to amend. Is there a second to the motion to amend? I see a second by Elizabeth Inayoshi. So we will go ahead. This is a secondary motion, which means that we will address it first while the main motion remains pending. After discussion, we will vote on whether to adopt the amendment. And after that, we will return to consideration of the main motion, either in its original form if the amendment fails or in the amended form if this motion passes. So I will now open discussion on whether to adopt the amendment. If you would like to speak in favor of adopting the amendment, please raise your hand now. If you would like to speak against adopting the amendment, please raise your hand. And if you have an other comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, it appears that we have no discussion, so we will go ahead and proceed on a vote on whether to adopt the amendment. So Eric DeFries just raised his hand. Were you making an other, sir? We'll go ahead and recognize you because I know there's just a delay.
We're going to take one more moment to get that vote ready. I'm going to add.
Sorry, can you go ahead and recognize Eric DeFries as an other comment?
On his way.
Thank you.
1 second.
Go ahead, Mr. DeFries.
Good morning. I'm Eric DeFries. I'm delegate as chair of the government law section. As I refreshed my screen, I still see the last 3 lines, it looks like, of the prior form, which still says recommends to the Oregon Rules of Appellate Procedure Committee to look at an amendment, etc. Is that intended to be there?
No, I think that the staff is in the process of trying to figure out how to strike that language.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
In fact, if you refresh your screen at this point, you should see the current language now.
Thank you, David. Okay, so we'll go ahead. I'm going to go back through the discussion. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of the amendment? Please raise your hand now. If there's anybody who would like to speak against the amendment, please raise your hand now. And if there are any other comments, please raise your hand now. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll go ahead and proceed on a vote on whether to adopt the amendment. I believe that the resolutions page has now been refreshed, or you might have to push refresh, but you should see a voting option on voting on whether to adopt the amendment. So please go ahead and cast your votes now. We'll close votes in 15 seconds. Okay, voting is now closed. Please refresh to see the final tally, and we'll show it up here as well. Okay, so the motion to amend passes. Thank you. So we will now return to discussion of the resolution as amended. So I will go ahead and recognize the pro comments. If anybody would like to speak in favor of the motion, which is now amended delegate resolution number 5, please raise your hand now. If there's anybody who would like to speak against the motion, against delegate resolution number 5 as amended, please raise your hand now. And I will move to the other microphone. If there's anybody who would like to make an other comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, if there is no further discussion, we will now proceed to vote on delegate resolution number 5 as amended. Please turn to your resolutions page of your HOD voting dashboard. It might take a moment to get staff to get the amended button, the button to vote on the amended resolution up.
Okay, we're ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. So go ahead and hit the refresh button and cast your vote. Yes, if you support the resolution, no if you oppose it, and abstain if you prefer not to vote. Voting will close in 15 seconds. Okay, voting is now closed. Please hit refresh to see the final tally. We'll go ahead and show it up on the screen as well. And thank you, the motion passes. So delegate resolution number 5 as amended has passed. Thank you, Mr. Lang, for all of your contributions. We will now move to delegate resolution number 6, item 13. And just to be clear, the vote was on the resolution as amended. Okay, so we'll now move on to item 13, which is delegate resolution number 6. Here to present the resolution is Delegate Shannon Flowers. Welcome, Ms. Flowers.
Good morning. Thank you. Shannon Flowers, Region 6. Our federal and state constitutions and state statutes provide a right to counsel in criminal, civil commitment, juvenile delinquency, juvenile dependency, and termination of parental rights proceedings. And individuals facing those types of proceedings who cannot afford counsel are entitled to have competent counsel appointed at state expense. The Oregon system has profound disparities in compensation and resources available to public defense providers versus attorneys representing the state and its agencies. Multiple studies have shown that our system effectively pits court-appointed counsel's financial interests against their clients' due process rights. The House of Delegates and the Oregon State Bar have long supported a strong public defense system and should continue to do so as we work toward achieving a more equitable and just system. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, did you move the motion?
Sorry, I did not do that. I move for the House of Delegates to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Do I have a second to the motion? Victory Walker has seconded. Thank you. So we move on to discussion. We'll go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to speak in favor of the motion. I recognize Stephanie Engelsman.
Hi, thank you. And sorry, this is Stephanie Engelsman, Region 5. I urge everyone to support this motion. I am a career public defender, and the longevity of this conversation in the state of Oregon exceeds my practice length. It has been going on for so long. I practiced in Illinois before coming here, and it was a state that has equal pay for public defenders and state's attorneys, and it really put people on the same playing field. Here, we talk at length about the great disparities in pay between public defenders and state's attorneys or district attorneys, but we need to start putting a number to it when people start to think about it. And attorneys who have been doing this for the district attorney as long as I've been doing it for public defense are getting in excess of $30,000 a year more for the same work on the opposing side of the table. So it's not just a lot more money, it's an entire salary worth more. There's PERS benefits, and everything else. We managed to fix it at the appellate level with a statute, and we need to fix it at the state level, at the trial level, for attorneys who are dedicated to this work, dedicated to our system, dedicated to our clients, but have other pressing issues like childcare, like retirement, like everything else that really takes a hit. And this is similar to my question with the first motion about the amount of money that people make when we're raising bar dues, and the nonprofits that are supporting public defense through the OPDS system are struggling to make ends meet already. And these public defenders who are dedicated to our system are struggling to make their daily ends meet. So I urge a unanimous vote in favor of this. So we send a strong message to the legislature, to the governor, to say we need to fix the system and we need to do it now. There's no more time to wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Engelsman. I'm going to move to the con microphone now. Is there anybody who would wish to speak against Delegate Resolution number 4? Please raise your hand. And anyone wants to speak at the other microphone, please raise your hand. I recognize Paul Vames. Mr. Vames, you're muted.
Good morning, or now good afternoon. My name is Paul Vames, and I'm from Region 4. While I agree with this proposal in principle and am a strong supporter of indigent defense, I don't think I'm the only attorney that's ever sat in a probation violation hearing and watched as an attorney who was being paid for by the state argued to a judge that his client should be continued on probation because the client had a good job and was showing up at work regularly and supporting his family and doing really well in the community as an argument to continue the probation. Though that may be a good argument to continue the probation, but that argument shouldn't be made by an indigent defense attorney. And so I will vote yes on this, but the Board of Governors and the criminal defense bar needs to ensure and support efficiency by supporting the principle that indigent should mean indigent, and that the qualification process for indigent counsel shouldn't be a convenience for the judiciary. It should mean that the person receiving state-funded legal services actually be indigent. And that's my only comment on this. Thank you very much for recognizing me, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Fames. So I'm going to lower all the hands and we'll go back to the pro microphone. If anybody would like to speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand now. I recognize Christopher Cobble.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can only see your Bitmoji.
Well, we'll just show my Bitmoji then.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Cobble, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with the bar, several sessions with the bar, even though I'm a civil litigator, proposing or arguing this in favor of the legislature and various legislators. And I'm wondering though, and maybe this is something that needs to be taken care of at the Board of Governors level, or maybe even at the level of the executive level of the bar, whether the approach needs to be different. To me, when you approach the legislature with a lot of people who are not lawyers in the legislature and who maybe question, what lawyers say, whether the approach of having the lawyers of the bar say this should be done is, because that's the way we've been doing it for a long time, is really the best way to go. There's a lot of people in the legislature that don't like lawyers and that frequently don't trust what lawyers are saying. And this is a budget issue primarily with the legislature. And they're always looking at, competing funds and supporting funds for what they say is the help of criminals is always on the bottom level. And so that's my view, and maybe it's something that needs to be taken care of, or maybe there can be some comment on that. But I'm really wondering whether or not, this is always the best way to approach. I'm clearly going to vote yes, but that's something I think we need to look at and consider. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cobble. I'll move to the con microphone. Is there anybody who would wish to speak against the resolution number 6? Okay, and I'll move to the other microphone. Does anybody have an other matter? Kate Teague, please. And don't forget to introduce yourself and your region, please.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. This is Kate Teague.
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Teague.
Okay, Region 5. I have no problem with this. I guess I assume from how it's written that it would come from the judiciary budget, and it says financial impact unstated. I just think that if we are clear about it and we actually say where the money's coming from, how much we need, we actually set targets, that we can meet those goals rather than just saying, yeah, we passed a resolution, we're going to do this, great. But if we actually say how we're going to make it happen, it's more likely to happen. And then so we don't continue this decades-long discussion about it and not actually doing any corrective action. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Teague. I'm gonna please lower the hands, and I'm gonna go back to the pro microphone. If anybody would like to speak in favor, please raise your hand. I recognize Dylan Potter.
Hello, I'm Dylan Potter, a member of the board of, the House of Delegates for Region 5. I'm a career public defender. I currently work with Metropolitan Public Defender in Portland. I just wanted to address a few comments that have been raised so far in this proceeding. Regarding the comment, respectfully, in response to Mr. Vame's comment regarding standards for appointing public defenders for indigent defendants, a large majority of our population that we represent as public defenders are people who hold full-time jobs and work and support the community and are valuable and members of our community, but live paycheck to paycheck or don't make enough to make ends meet. And the mere fact that they have a job should not be a disqualifying standard for appointed attorneys. It is, I'll leave that whole discussion of why that's the case and the socioeconomic factors that lead that to be part of what we deal with to another side. But I say that just in response to that, I wanted to note that there are standards in place. They're somewhat exacting, but large portions of our population deserve our services because they can't afford them on their own, even if they do have full-time work, but they're supporting families and not able to make ends meet and living paycheck to paycheck. To address the issue with lobbying the legislature and what this resolution means, this resolution is essentially just expressing support and would have no real financial impact. There's been a long, long history, as Ms. Engelman said, of our organizations, the public defenders are involved in lobbying legislature session after session, making proposals that would transform public defense in Oregon. And repeatedly, these proposals have been essentially shot down by the legislature. The history of that is extensive, and I'll spare you my editorializing on it. But I would encourage you to support this. The continued support by the House of Delegates and the bar for reforming public defense in Oregon means a lot to those of us that are in the trenches day to day. So I'd encourage all of you to support this measure going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. I'll move to the con microphone. Is there anybody who would like to speak against Delegate Resolution number 6? And moving on to the others, is there anybody who has an other comment? Okay, moving back to the pro microphone. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of Delegate Resolution number 6? Please raise your hand. And anybody who would like to speak against Delegate Resolution number 6, please raise your hand. And now moving to the other, if there's any other comments, please raise your hand. Victory Walker.
Good afternoon. I call the question. Victory Walker, Region 3.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. So we have a motion to call the question. Do I have a second? John Bachhoffner has seconded the motion to call the question. Please raise your hand if you have any objections to calling the question. Okay, since it is unanimous, we will proceed to a vote. A vote on the underlying motion, which is a vote on Delegate Resolution number 6. So go ahead and turn to the resolutions page of your HOD voting dashboard. Hit the refresh button and indicate your vote. Yes, if you support the resolution, no if you oppose it, and abstain if you prefer not to vote. Voting will close in 15 seconds. Thank you. Okay, voting is now closed. We'll hit the refresh to see the final tally. Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Flowers. So now we will move on to BOG Resolution number 3, which is our annual in memoriam, which will not include a vote of the House. Joining me for this item are board members, our President-elect David Wade and Colin Andrews from Region 5, who will help me honor our colleagues that we have lost since the last annual meeting. So I'm going to wait a moment so that Mr. Wade and Mr. Andrews can join me. Okay, thank you. So BOG resolution number 3, resolved that the Oregon State Bar House of Delegates and members assembled virtually stand for a moment of silence in honor of the members of the Oregon State Bar who have died since the 2019 House of Delegates meeting. We will now recognize their names. Matthew Abs, Wayne Anala, Jeffrey A. Babiner, Amy S. Baker, E. Richard Bodyfelt, Alan B. Bush, Charles E. Corrigan, William B. Crow, John Culver, Nicholas Fish, Stephen S. Ford, Joe French, Roger C. Germanson, Alan Goldman, Randy L. Gorey, Michael C. Haynes, Susan M. Hammer, Edward J. Harry, John R. Hassan.
Ronald M. James, J. Allen Jensen, Dennis C. Carnop, John M. Keller, Shelley Keller, Andrew S. Kierstead, William P. Kuntz, Joseph A. Labate, Honorable Hans A. Lindy, John R. Loker, David M. Logan, Mervyn H. Loya, Don H. Marmaduke, Ben Martin, P. Scott McCleary, Paul R. Meyer, M. Chapin Milbank.
Gene A. Noland, David P. O'Brien, Robert W. Oliver, the Honorable James A. Redden, Joanne Reisman, Stephen E. Rich, Dwayne William Schultz, Louis K. Scott, Donald C. Seymour, Thomas M. Sheridan, John R. Sidman, Janice R. Snow, M. Scott Sorensen Jolink, Kevin P. Sullivan, Michael E. Swain, W. Wells Talmadge, John J. Tyner, Ron Versteeg, Donald W. Witcher, Douglas R. Wilkinson, and Charles W. Wilson. If there are any names that we have not stated here, please raise your hand so President Reeves can recognize you and recognize those who we did not include.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews and Mr. Wade. So if there are any names that we missed, please raise your hand electronically. Yes, I recognize Dylan Potter.
I just want to acknowledge another longtime member of MPD that was, we lost this year, John Culver.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Any other names? Okay, I ask that you all join me in a moment of silence to honor our departed colleagues. All right, thank you, David and Colin, and all members of the House of Delegates and guests. We will now move on to BOG Resolution 4, our final agenda item, which will be presented by Board Member Adrienne Brown from Region 5.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Veterans Day Remembrance. Whereas military service is vital to the perpetuation of freedom and the rule of law, and whereas thousands of Oregonians have served in the military, and many of them have given their lives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Oregon State Bar hereby extends its gratitude to all those who have served and are serving in the military, and further offers the most sincere condolences to the families and loved ones of those who have died serving their country. Thank you.
And can you go ahead and move the resolution, please?
Yes. I would move the BOG resolution number 4.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I see John Bachhoffner has seconded. Thank you. We'll move on to discussion. If there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. If there's anybody who would like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand. I recognize Doug Hageman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead and introduce yourself and your region, please, sir.
Doug Hageman, Region 5. I just want to make 2 points. First, I reject the premise that military service is vital to the perpetuation of freedom and the rule of law. I find it almost offensive. The United States military has not been involved in anything reasonably resembling protecting freedom for 70 years, and the numerous willful violations of international law by the United States and its adventures abroad makes the connection of military service to the rule of law, frankly, laughable. Second, I think thanking veterans for their service without recognizing the estimated 1,200 of those veterans who are homeless in Oregon and the estimated 13,000 veterans who are homeless nationwide makes this really an empty gesture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hageman. I'm going to go ahead and move to the other microphone. If there's somebody who would like to be recognized at the other microphone, please raise your hand now. I recognize David Wade.
I would like to recognize the military service of Adrian Brown, our esteemed Board of Governors member who served our country in the Middle East and who is testament in her own personal capacity that service in the military was service to the rule of law.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Okay, I will move back to the pro microphone. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of BOG resolution number 4? And anybody who would like to speak against resolution number 4? And moving to the other microphone, would anybody like to make an other comment? Okay, so I'm sorry, Victory Walker.
In case you weren't already going there, Victory Walker, Region 3, call the question.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. So we have a motion to call the question. Do I have a second? John Bachhoffner has seconded. Thank you. We're going to lower all the hands, and if anybody has any objections to calling the question, please raise them now. Okay, I don't see any objections, so we will now turn to vote on the underlying motion. So please be sure that the resolution on your screen includes the correct voting options. If not, hit refresh, then make your selection. Okay, so voting will close in 15 seconds. Okay, voting is now closed. We'll hit the refresh to see the final tally. And thank you. The motion passes. So thank you, Ms. Brown. Thank you for your service, and thank you to all the service people of our country. Okay, so that concludes our business for 2020. Thank you all for participating, and thank you so much for all of your patience as we work through all of the technical complications due to this new platform. Because this is one of my last official duties as president, I do want to take a moment to say some thank yous. First of all, thank you to all of you and to all of the bar members who have shown me support during the last year. Serving on the Board of Governors has been a rewarding experience, but being the bar president will certainly be a highlight of my legal career. I am especially grateful for the support and hard work of my fellow board members, and I will treasure my friendships with them forever. And I'm also particularly grateful for the friendship and support of the bar's CEO, Helen Hirschbiel, and all of the amazing bar staff. You have all done an incredible job, and you have all had to make personal sacrifices to get us through this year, which has been extraordinary. I've always been proud to be a lawyer, and I am even more proud to have had this chance to further the mission of the Oregon State Bar. And I am actually very proud that I did it this year of such challenging times. So with that, the 2020 House of Delegate meetings is adjourned. I'm gonna bang my virtual gavel, which is really just waving goodbye to all of you and sending my well wishes and best wishes and thank yous.